all world governments desire sea access. Although it is not decisive for the development of a nation, it is extremely useful as it facilitates international trade, as it allows the transport of goods through ports. It provides greater access to natural resources, promotes tourism and recreation, and also provides a way to project military presence and thus ensure national security. Although some countries never knew the sea, there are others that did, but they lost it. Are you interested in knowing 5 of them? Alright, then stay until the end of the video. Serbia is an extremely interesting actor in the geopolitics of the Balkans and Eastern Europe. Although today it may seem like a country without much influence, in the past it was forged as a great power on 2 specific occasions. The first of them, through the Serbian Empire of the 14th century, which was when the country reached its peak by becoming the main power of the Balkans under the leadership of Stefan Uros Nuzan. This golden era in which it reached the shores of the Adriatic and Aegean seas was extremely ephemeral, and after the death of Stefan and the rise of the Ottoman Empire, Serbia disintegrated in less than 3 decades. Several centuries later, Serbia re-emerges as a state, and after the First World War, it becomes the unifying axis of the South Slavs, giving birth to the well-known Yugoslavia with its capital in Belgrade. Thus, throughout the 20th century, the Serbs had access to almost the entire eastern coast of the Adriatic Sea. But this would change after the death of the well-known leader Josip Broz Tito and the consequent disintegration of the country amidst bloody wars and coups. By 1995, only Montenegro remains united with Serbia, so it retains its sea until 2006, the year in which this country separates, making Serbia once again a Mediterranean country. Ethiopia has the reputation of being one of the few countries that was never colonized by a European power, although this is only partially true. What is true is that it is one of the oldest countries on the African continent, and its history dates back to the 1st century AD when the Kingdom of Axum was founded, which reached the shores of the Red Sea, followed by the Zagwe dynasty, and finally the Ethiopian Empire, also known as Abygemia. However, during the 16th century, it lost its access to the sea after the incursion of the Ottoman Empire, and subsequently, what was its sea was occupied by the Italians, who founded Eritrea. By the 1936s, Italy made a second and successful attempt to conquer Ethiopia. Thus, Italian East Africa was founded, which was extremely ephemeral, as the Italians were expelled from the territory during World War II. Thus, Ethiopia regained its historic sea, first forming a federation with Eritrea, given that the Eritreans had already forged a separate identity after so many centuries of separation, but in 1972 decided to annex it as another province. This caused discontent among the population, who joined as one of the many factions during the civil war that broke out in Ethiopia, known as the Eritrean Liberation Front. After decades of struggle, and in the face of a weakening central government, Eritrea achieved its independence in 1993, and thus becomes a sovereign country recognized by the rest of the nations, which makes Ethiopia a Mediterranean country again. Austria and Hungary formed a dual monarchy known as the Austro-Hungarian Empire during the 19th century, which was discussed in this video. Although in terms of national defense and foreign relations, it functioned as a single country. In practice, they were 2 separate states that were part of the same empire, Cisleithania, which contained the Austrian domains, and Transleithania, the Hungarian domains. As you can see on the map, both kingdoms had access to the Adriatic Sea, Austria through the Kingdom of Dalmatia and the Margraviate of Istria, and Hungary through the Kingdom of Croatia and Livonia. The big problem is that the populations of the coasts of both kingdoms were ethnically alien to the Hungarian or Austrian, and not having populated them properly would become a big problem. This is evident after World War I, when Austria-Hungary was part of the Central Powers, which were defeated. After the treaties of Saint-Germain-en-Laye and Trianon, Austria and Hungary are dismembered and reduced to the territories where German and Hungarian are spoken respectively, which puts both on the list of Mediterranean countries. Probably the loss of Armenia's sea has the most macabre background on this list. It turns out that this is one of the oldest countries of all, and during the 1st century BC it became a great empire that reached the shores of the Black Sea under the reign of Tigranes the Great. The point is that Armenia would only be independent for a few more centuries, and subsequently fell under the yoke of countless powers that settled in the Caucasus. However, ethnic Armenians never stopped inhabiting the eastern shores of the Black Sea, in what was known as Western Armenia. Fast forwarding to the 20th century, the Armenians of this region were under the rule of the declining Ottoman Empire, and the infamous Armenian genocide was perpetrated from 1915 by the Young Turks in an attempt at ethnic homogenization. And it was not only a physical genocide, but also a cultural one, as the Turks made sure to also destroy their churches and monuments to leave no trace of the Armenian legacy. After the war, the Ottoman Empire ended up on the losing side, and through the Treaty of Sèvres, they accepted the partition of their last territories, which included the creation of an Armenian state that included Western Armenia and its respective access to the Black Sea. However, the Turkish national movement, led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, rose up against the European powers that wanted to impose this treaty and fought on several fronts to reclaim more territories. This led to the Armenian-Turkish War, in which the weakened Armenians could not keep their territories and definitively lost Western Armenia, as stipulated in the Treaty of Lausanne. That is, they thus lose their last chance of having had sea. And to close this list, the country that could not be missing, our beloved plurinational state of Bolivia, which gained independence from Spain in 1825, obtaining the territories of the old royal audience of Charcas, which included the sea of the current Antofagasta region. Once as a sovereign country, Bolivia baptizes this region as the littoral department. The problems begin in the 1870s with the southern neighbor, Chile, with whom territorial and economic problems arise. But the straw that broke the camel's back was the secret defensive alliance that Bolivia signs with Peru, which ended up convincing Chile to declare war on both countries. This is how the well-known Pacific War begins. A big problem that Bolivia had is that it lacked a navy to defend its sea, as well as a competent army, which is why the advance of the Chilean troops was quick and easy. After the end of the war, Chile emerges victorious, and Bolivia is still forced to give up its sea, which is turned into the province of Antofagasta. Despite recent claims, it seems that Bolivia will continue to maintain its Mediterranean. In the end, these have been the countries that lost their sea, as you can see, all of them for political and war reasons. It's important to highlight that this didn't necessarily mean they became poor or helpless countries, and the results have varied depending on each government's performance in moving forward. What other country do you know that has become landlocked? Don't forget to leave your comment and subscribe to the channel. Also, I leave in the description my social networks, and in case you want to see the new videos in pre-release and have a greater interaction with me, your donations on Patreon, unamanito.net, or channel members are welcome. See you next time. CC by Antarctica Films, Argentina.